There's no doubt that you all know that Sufi stories are filled with sacred symbols, and sacred numbers, and hidden secrets. So let's see what this story brings out for us insofar as the symbols, those numbers, those secrets are. This story about a time long ago in a far-off place where there was a king. And this king had 3 daughters, 3 very beautiful daughters. And they were named Ruby because she had lips like the beautiful cerise of the ruby. And then there was Pearl, and Pearl had alabaster skin like the wonderful marble. And the third, and most beloved to his father, was Rose, because she was as beautiful as a rose. Now these 3 daughters came of marriageable age, so he decided to call each of them to him and ask them a question. So he called his first daughter to him, Ruby, and he asked the question. And the question was, does the lining protect the coat, or the coat protect the lining? And Ruby said, Emperor of all the world, it is the coat that protects the lining. The king was very pleased with this answer. So he said, I will give you in marriage to my Grand Vizier. Now, Ruby, the princess, was very happy because the Grand Vizier was noble and he was very rich. So Ruby was very happy to have him as her husband. But then the second daughter was called to the king, Pearl, and the same question was posed to her. Does the lining protect the coat, or the coat protect the lining? And Pearl said, greatest emperor in all of the world, it is the coat that protects the lining. Ah, said the king, very pleased. I will give you in marriage to the captain of the guards. Now Pearl was very happy about this because the captain of the guards was a handsome, strong and virile man. But then the third and most loved of his daughters was called Rose, and he posed the same question. Does the lining protect the coat, or the coat protect the lining? And Rose said, blessed and beloved father, it is the lining that protects the coat. What did you say? Said the king. She said, blessed father, it's the lining that protects the coat. And the king became very, very angry. He said, all of this education I've been giving you has amounted to nothing. I will give you in marriage to the most unworthy of the men in my kingdom. So the very next day, messengers were sent out to the far reaches of the kingdom to find the most unworthy man. And the emissaries came back, the messengers came back and said he'd been found. So the princess was garbed, taking off her royal garments, her silks and her jewels, and she was dressed in a simple shift and sent with a messenger out of the palace gates. But Rose was a very clever princess, and she'd hidden 3 gold sovereigns in between her ample bosoms. She set off down the road with the messenger, and after some time they arrived indeed at the far reaches of the kingdom. And there, in front of the princess, in a barren piece of land, was a shack, a hut, a simple hut, broken down. The roof was leaking, the windows were broken, the doors hung on their hinges. And her husband-to-be, who was called Harun, lived in an unused oven in the grounds. He didn't come out of his oven except at night to relieve himself. His mother, an old widow, gave him food inside the oven. This was the most unworthy man in all the king's kingdom. But strangely, Rose was not at all fazed, upset by her situation. Very quickly, using one of her gold sovereigns, she started to repair the house. The roof was rethatched, the windows were repainted, and the hinges on the doors were repaired. She even set to and made a little garden. The grounds was cleanly swept, and she made a little pond with a waterfall. But in the meantime, she told her mother-in-law, which is very unusual. You know, usually mother-in-laws are in charge, but she was a princess after all, so she could dictate to the mother-in-law. And she said, "From now on, you will not give Harun, my husband, his food inside the oven. It will be placed outside the oven." Well, the first time that this was done, he swore, and he cursed, and he shouted. And his mother was about to relent, but the princess said, "No." So from that time on, the food was placed outside the oven, and he had to come out of the oven to get his food. Well, you know, as these reparations and adornments were being made to the house, the time went on, and the princess then said that he was to be given no food. Well, after a couple of days, of course, Harun, he didn't just curse, he wailed. But the princess was adamant. There was no food to be given to this man. Even though his mother pleaded with the princess to allow her to feed him, the princess would not allow him to be fed. But one day, after a few days, the princess cooked the most delicious meal that you could imagine. All the most fragrant, spicy foods. So the aroma of the foods floated over the garden, out to the oven where Harun was. And of course, the smells were so inviting. He crawled out of his oven. He crawled over to the house. And of course, to his very great surprise, the house was not like it was before. Here it was, fully repaired, a cottage, welcoming, a fire in the hearth, and the wonderful smells of food. but he felt so ashamed. He was dirty, smelly. So when he came to the hearth of the house, he dare not go in. The shame was so great. But the Princess Rose, his wife, invited him in. Come, my husband, come. With great shame, he came and he sat beside her. His long, dirty nails, his filthy clothes, his body smelled, but she treated him. Maybe it's only one seed out of 1,000 seeds or 10,000 seeds that it has the possibility to allow something to grow in us. The Sufis have a beautiful saying, and it's significant in relationship to the story because the princess recalled Rose. It's said by the great poet Rumi, the ground of unknowing, where the rose always blooms.
Say it again.
The ground, the field of unknowing, where the rose always blooms. What would you believe is the meaning of this relative to this story?
What is it means?
Field of unknowing, where the rose always blooms. Thinking and recognizing our own heart and this story, Rose and her.
I feel that the story, when you tell the story, you create a frame. And the history of him is out of the frame. Like the story meets him in a point when he's already mature and לא יוצלח כזה. איך אומרים? Loser. He's already a loser, and that's when the story meets him. Like, for me, the unknown is how he became like that. I mean, what hurted him, how he got in such a terrible condition that only a rose can open his heart.
I can think of one thing that, like, only it's also, I would say it as Jesus would say, only the unworthy can enter
gates of heaven.
yeah, okay.
Right.
Something like that. I didn't think of him unbaked, I thought of him too baked. He already said he was unbaked.
I have a question. Because every time when you think about these things, then you usually think about our inner life, inner voice, then we protect this inner voice always. Like the question was, what protects what?
Yes.
And, the first thing you would say is that our shield protects the inner voice, right?
Right.
But here she answered that it's the other way. So our inner voice protects our shield.
All right, now
So
we're
that's
diving
like,
deep, aren't we? Yes. So we dive deep into this now, and we can ask, what is the meaning of the saying? It's the lining that protects the coat, not the coat that protects the lining. So we get down to the nitty-gritty here. Isn't it? So when we look at this inner and the outer, what is it that reigns supreme? What is it that wins in the end? Is it our mind? Is it our outer being? Or is it the inner?
I think it's both by listening to the story, because the way the story's been told, the code is very important also. And by the end of the story, she created, the two of them created a comeback to the king through wealth and honor, and so the code is also important, and also the inner voice is also very precious, and I think it's like there is no contest between the two of them. It's like
Cooperation.
It's you have to work to maintain the light within you and to create heaven wherever you go.
I have a question, also to myself. From the story is very straightforward for me, inner and outer. I do not understand exactly what was the meaning, I'm asking myself and everybody here, of this person that he met on the way back home from the merchant and gave him the free advice that actually made the change.
Yes.
And actually allowed him to survive.
Yes.
My thoughts are that the Sufis' way of thinking, it's something super human, or it's artificial. It's not. It's like, trust inside you and outside and this, but there is something above us. Because what's the meaning of this? What always listen to an advice? No, it's. I'm trying to understand what is the. In Hebrew you say musar skel. What's musar skel? Moral conclusion, moral
Yes.
of this messenger. Okay?
Messenger. Yes.
Where is he coming from? It doesn't really matter, but he's giving him a very strong advice.
Yes.
What is it? Something I'm raising a question.
But we have our own experiences of this in life, the moments of grace that come along, the book that we take off the shelf that gives us a line that triggers something inside of us. That could be
Mhm.
a messenger. Meeting on many different.
It's an open.
Jesus says that when you give someone money, because you open your heart to pity him,
Yes.
there is no giver and no receiver.
I just think symbols, the signs we get along the way, and we don't immediately understand, we don't immediately use them. They just go somewhere into our subconsciousness, and then we can.
But they are not always so clear. Like this is like really advices. Don't do this, don't do this. And it's not.
Yes.
You don't have where to question it.
Yes.
You have it on you, and and you just need to find the cases to use these advices.
Yes.
So I'm also wondering, like what's the meaning of it in the story? Like, what can I learn from it?
Yes.
I think it depends about your shield, Because if your shield is too strong, then you have to, then you won't be able to understand these things. Like, it can come clear and it can come unclear. And if your shield is too strong, then you won't get it clear. And if it's not too strong, then it might be clear enough for you to understand it. Like sometimes it gets really clear, you know? When these moments that you have, that you know exactly what you need to do and there's no doubts about it. The signs. But it depends if you can accept it and see it, you know? And if you think it's about your shield.
You know, the third advice, putting aside if you have to count to 40 or to count to 3, there's also a phrase, always count to 3. Let's put to 40, probably it has a very strong meaning for the Sufis. The third advice is good for all of us, all our life. Always before you act, count. Think. The first and the second advice is not something I would take to life and to
Why?
always.
The second one also is...
The first, sleep on high ground.
Sleeping on high ground, that's nature. If you live in nature, you always sleep on high ground. The first one is the unnatural one.
Get,
Is one
to
that's
enter
not
in the
necessarily natural.
It might be even dangerous.
What was the first one?
Put your finger inside. I mean,
Go head first.
with your leg.
Yeah, it could be.
Could be very dangerous to go head first.
China, when Buddhism was rampant throughout the whole land, so many young men had been called to the teachings of the Buddha, and they traveled around the countryside as monks. But there were so many wandering monks that the monasteries that were in the land were not able to cope with the number of visitors that were seeking hospitality from them. So they devised a way to allow them to be a little bit discriminating about who was to receive their hospitality. So it so happened that there was a very small monastery, temple, nestled in a little village somewhere in one of the provinces of China, and the two monks who looked after that monastery were brothers. And one was tall and handsome and intelligent, very clever. And the other one was short and a little bit misshapen, and he only had one eye. Well, it so happened that one day a visiting monk came along to this monastery seeking hospitality for the night. But it was usual that the tall, handsome, intelligent brother was the one who debated with the visiting monk to see who won the debate. And whoever won the debate, if the visiting monk won the debate, he would be invited in. If he didn't win the debate, he would have to move on to some other place to seek a place for the night. So the visiting monk came along, and the tall, handsome monk said, "I'm just too tired. I've been studying the scriptures all day, I've been meditating all day, I'm just too tired." And he said to his younger little brother with the one eye, you'll have to debate with him. But the younger brother said, "But you know I'm stupid. You know I've only got one eye. How can I debate?" He said, "Well, why don't you ask the visiting monk to debate in silence?" So he thought, oh, that was a good idea. So the visiting monk came in, and he went off with the younger brother, and they were gone for a little while. Then all of a sudden, the visiting monk came out and picked up his little bag and was about to leave. And the older brother, tall, intelligent brother, came in and said, where are you going?" And the visiting monk said, "I have to leave because your brother won the debate." "Oh," he said, "well, tell me what happened." And he said, "Well, I held up one finger to indicate the Buddha, and then your brother held up two fingers to indicate the Buddha and his teachings. So I held up 3 fingers to indicate the Buddha, the teachings, and the gatherings, the Sangha. And then he held up his fist to indicate that they were all one. I have to leave. So the visiting monk left. And then the little brother with the one eye came out. He said, "Where is he? Where is he?" And his brother said, "Oh, he's left. What happened? What happened?" "Well," he said, "he held up one finger to indicate that I only had one eye." So I held up 2 fingers to congratulate him for having 2 eyes. And he held up 3 fingers to indicate that between us we only had 3 eyes. So I want to punch him. Where is he?
They didn't know that there was
What's the deep meaning of this story? And how do they go together, these 2 stories? There's a connection between the 2. The Sufi story and the Buddhist story, just about what we've been talking about. What really does the second story mean for us? What rises up for you?
He learned something without the other one meant to teach him anything.
Yes.
Just got something.
Uh-huh.
So it's like a tool, you know. It's like a he got enlightened or something in some way. He didn't mean to teach him anything. He just wanted to give him a fist to the face.